What is up, guys? It's time for a new tier list since we had Goodra release and also a balanced patch. As always, I split my tier list into two parts. First is a lane tier list and second the central area tier list. In the lane tier list, I always judge a Pokemon based on how they do when they are picked on top or bot path from level 1 to level 15. So just because someone is like the best level 4 Pokemon, but they fall off in late game, will not put them into S tier as an example, right? Just so we're on the same page. First, let's start with Venusaur. Venusaur, I think in lane, is not that amazing of a Pokemon. I don't recommend it. I feel like Venusaur, if you really want to have a lot of success with it, you play it in the central area position, where you get to late game a lot. Zeraora, I mean, it struggles right now. Is it really C tier worthy? I don't think so. Is it B tier? Maybe. Like, it's not a good Pokemon, right? It needs some buffs. It's very unfair that how late Zeraora still gets its moves, and still just needs some heavy buffs. I think Sylveon is always just a solid pick. It's just, if you want to pick a solid special attack Pokemon for lane that can carry games, Sylveon is a great choice. Hyper Voice is great for lane. Mystic Fire is also totally fine. Can pick both. Next up, we have Aegislash, but I feel like it's not that great right now. I think a lot of these Pokemon just... I mean, it's alright. You can play it. You're not going to necessarily always carry games. But also, like, getting to level 7 is actually much more difficult than you think it is. There's certain lanes where you're just going to struggle insanely hard, especially because there's a lot of lane bodies right now, like Slowbro or Espeon and Mew and all those fun Pokemon. And it's actually quite hard to get to level 7, where you start playing the game before level 7 because you're kind of weak, and it can take a while. Dragonite for lane, absolute troll pick. Would never recommend playing this Pokemon in lane. Very, very bad. I think Mamoswine is very solid of a Pokemon still. Just a bit outshined by other defenders, but doesn't mean that he's a bad Pokemon. I think Mamoswine is also just great. And then we have Zacian, of course, S tier. I don't think we have to talk much about this one. That is for sure. I think Zoroark, again, is a very strong Pokemon actually right now when it comes to laning phase. I'm actually going to put it into A tier because I think it can carry games. It just takes a lot of skill, a lot of practice, and the right team comes. But I do think Zoroark is one of those Pokemon that has, like, he destroys laning phase insanely hard and he can snowball games. Like, I would probably consider him right now the second best speedster right after Dodrio, but when it comes to laning phase, man, this Pokemon, as soon as it gets to level 5, which is actually quite easy, because the early game is also not too bad of this Pokemon in the first evolution, it just starts ranking up kills and kills and kills. It's crazy. Sableye is still a very strong Pokemon as well, even though it got nerfed. I'm going to put it down into A tier, just for, I mean, it's such an annoying Pokemon. It's so strong. It is very strong. I mean, A tier, again, means those are good Pokemon, right? Zoroark, I guess, is a bit questionable still. Maybe it should be B+ tier. Because even I struggle carrying games with it in the end. So honestly, maybe B+ is a bit fair, because it might win early mid game, but it doesn't win late game. It's just how it is. Late game is so difficult on this Pokemon to actually close out games. Pikachu, I think Pikachu's just fine. I do think I posted a video with both builds are amazing, and they're pretty like both of these work. If you want to play Pikachu, you totally can. B+ means those Pokemon are totally playable, right? B+ doesn't mean bad either. It's just there's better options, right? Straight up, there's probably better options, but B+ also means those Pokemon are very good. I'm actually going to keep Zoroark into A. I like it there more, because I think it does carry games very hard. Gengar, in laning phase, I mean, it is very bad, right? Like, I used to play it in lane, but Gengar's meta is not really right now as well. Can't recommend playing it in lane, whatever. I think Zeraora just is a bit better early game, but Zeraora is also just a bad Pokemon. Like, this doesn't mean really too much between B and C, but C is just, I would not pick those Pokemon in lane whatsoever. Trenator, honestly, every time I have a Trenator in lane in my team lately, it just feels so useless. Like, it never starts playing the game. I feel like you have to get lucky and get some random takedowns somewhere. But if I would play this Pokemon, still probably central area, or you play like Duo with someone who needs level 5, you let him jungle, and afterwards you take the jungle rotation, right? And you just lane him until the second jungle rotation is up. That's totally fine. But if that doesn't happen, this Pokemon is going to struggle a lot. Lucario, I mean, I think Lucario is just... I think he's honestly probably still solid A tier. But for the average player in general, I think right now, like, I think in tournaments, he's still totally fine. In solo queue, I feel like you lack a lot of damage if you play this Pokemon. I think Power Punch, Close Combat is pretty solid, but nothing too crazy. It just has very good laning phase. I mean, I don't know. Lucario is still fine, I think. I think, you know what? He's still fine if you play Power Punch, Close Combat. You can actually have a lot of success. Mr. Mime, I'm going to drop to... I mean, I think Barrier Confusion is actually still pretty decent. And I think I'm going to leave it at 8 as well for that. Barrier Confusion, I think it's a strong build. That for sure we'll see play as well. Gardevoir for lane has fallen off now because of the nerfs. I think B+ is a fair thing for that as well. Next to, like, you know, these attacks. So actually I'm going to just... They're not going to have an order. I'm just going to put the roles next to each other so it's a bit easier to see. you know, compared to the other Pokemon in the same tier. Azumarill, same as Aegislash, I feel like you can pick it. Is it going to carry your games? Not necessarily. Is it a fine Pokemon? You can still play it. It's just not going to really just hard carry games either. Garchomp, I think Garchomp is actually very, very good of a Pokemon, personally. And I think A+ might be a bit too high, but I do think Garchomp is great, especially for laning phase as well. A lot of people underestimate Gible, and we see Garchomp being picked a lot in tournaments as well, actually. So I think Garchomp is actually a very good Pokemon. And I think actually I might even put it into A+ tier. I think when it comes to lane arounders, I think it's a pretty good choice. It's very strong competitive as well, as I mentioned. A lot of people pick it. I think it's a good Pokemon, personally. Maybe overestimating a bit too much, but I do think I really like Garchomp currently. Hooper, easily A tier, maybe even S tier, A+ tier, I mean, easily. All the supports are going to be up here somewhere, because all of them are insanely strong. Trevenant, I think, is also still A+ tier, even after the Woodhammer nerfs. Woodhammer Hornleech still feels very good. Might not go Pain Split anymore, but Hornleech Woodhammer still does a crazy amount. I think Snorlax is also just a good Pokemon, next to Mamoswine, just a reliable defender you can pick and have lots of success with, you know, so good Pokemon for sure as well. And then we have Wigglytuff. I think Wigglytuff is also honestly not too bad of a Pokemon. I think the AoE Unstoppable is quite fine, and we do see it being played as well in competitive. So, but I don't know if it's higher than a B+ tier. I mean, maybe. Honestly, it could just be A. I think Wigglytuff is much better than people think it is, for sure. And Espeon as well. Like Espeon, Wigglytuff, which we're gonna talk. Or maybe I should just talk about Espeon as well right now. It's so OP. Like if you have an Espeon and a Wigglytuff in the lane, you're just gonna stomp the entire game like crazy. Everything into Psyshock is pretty much a guaranteed knockout. It is crazy. Espeon also goes into S tier for me, for sure. I think this Pokemon is right now probably the best lane attacker you can pick. I think Mew just fell down to A+ tier now, which is also still very good, of course. But I'm gonna put Mew down to A+ tier just because of a few nerfs. I do think this Pokemon is, every time I play it, I do very well on it, but in general, I think it lost now to Espeon when it comes to how strong, you know, those two Pokemon are. Next up, we have Crustle, which I just can't recommend right now. You can play Rock Tomb Crustle, but man, this Pokemon is so bad. They really just need to buff it. Crustle is awful. Greninja is same as always. Terrible lane Pokemon. Can't recommend it. Cinderace is the same. Talonflame, I think, is a bit better in lane, just because this Pokemon has off mobility, and honestly, his early game is quite good, so I think B+ is for sure deserved. I think Slowbro goes into A+ tier. Very strong defender right now. Eldegoss goes into A+ tier, another support that is very good as well. You can always pick Eldegoss and do very well with it. I think Charizard might go back to a B tier right now, just because he got a bit more damage in the early game. But I still don't like I still think you should not pick Charizard in lane, personally. It's just not a great Pokemon for laning phase. It really just not. If you pick Charizard, for sure should be like probably a central area Pokemon, like all of these right now are more central area Pokemon as well, if you really want to play them. And even then, they're not really, you know, the best right now. I think Charizard is a solid pick for central. You can for sure pick it now again and have a lot of success with it. But higher than this in laning phase, I mean, as soon as you get to level 9, you can spam Unite. So maybe, honestly, I don't think it's necessarily C tier. I think I'd rather have Charizard than these 4 Pokemon if I have like a laner. Because at least at level 9, I know he's going to have impact. Just going to Unite move someone on cooldown. And now with the lower Unite move, they can actually farm back into the game quite easily. That's why Charizard is also quite decent for those things. Because you can always just target a high level enemy and just Unite move him and get experience, right? As soon as you get to level 9. So that for sure works out. Cramorant, I think Cramorant is a solid Pokemon for laning phase as well. Dive, Air Slash. I would not recommend Surf Hurricane. Like, Surf Hurricane is down here. And Air Slash, Dive is up here. Blastoise, I think, is a very good Pokemon as well. Very solid choice, always pretty much. Either it's A+ or A tier. Yeah, either A or A+ tier. Clefable, also to me, it's a A+ Pokemon. I don't know why it has a defender background right here, but you know, it's the support, of course. Supports are OP. I'm gonna say it, supports are OP. If you have, I think if you have healing in your team, doesn't matter what, like, you're gonna have a higher chance at winning if you just have a healing Pokemon. Right? It just makes games so much easier to play. Ninetales joins these Pokemon down here. It just lacks a tiny bit of things. It's still fine Pokemon. Again, B+ doesn't mean those Pokemon are bad. Machamp, solid A tier. Currently, I would say. Yeah, just solid A tier. Blissey as well, A+ tier. Joins the other supports up here. Greedent, Green is just always a decent Pokemon, but higher than A, I can't really put it. Because there's not a lot of people that actually play this Pokemon. But for people that play this Pokemon, it is absolutely insane. The Decidueye, terrible lineup. But I mean, the only thing is why he's better than Cinderace and Greninja is because it's level 7. Just does much more than the other two, right? As soon as you get to level 7, you can stay back and Spirit Shackle at least. Compared to Greninja, Cinderace, or, you know, let's put Dragapult as well right up here down already. You can actually do things, right? As soon as you get to level 7, Spirit Shackle has impact. It has a good amount of impact. But, oh man, seeing this in our games is just like, it feels like free. You just farm it, right? Like, it's just almost a free knockout every single time. Duraludon, I think, is a bit better of an attacker than these two when it comes to laning phase, because it doesn't have to evolve. And level 5, it's very strong already with Dragon Pulse or Flash Cannon, which I would not recommend going, but yeah, much, much better than those. Delphox, I don't like seeing Delphox in lane. It totally works because this Pokemon is very good though. It just depends on who you lane against. As soon as you play against like Mew, Espeon, Slowbro like in lane, it's gonna struggle very hard if the enemies have good last hitting Pokemon, right? That's the only reason I'm gonna put it down here, but I would put it into a higher B+ tier if I can when it comes to you know, laning. In Central, it's still gonna be in one of the highest tiers because it's an amazing Central area Pokemon if it gets experience in. Glaceon, kind of the same, I think. Icicle Spear totally works in lane. It's a fine Pokemon. I think it's actually, evolutions are just so OP, right? Like, evolutions are just super, super good because they get their power spikes so much early on. And I do think Icicle Spear for laning phase is actually much better than you might think it is. So, yeah. It's hard for me to rank like Delphox and Glaceon. I think there's someone between B+ and A. But they're for sure picks you can be doing. Again, B+ means you can pick those Pokemon, totally. Like, B+ doesn't mean bad. By B and C, I would start being like, yeah, I would not recommend playing those Pokemon. But B+ still means you can play it. There's going to be certain games where you're going to struggle because the enemies have much better laning phase, right? Like, these Pokemon work if the enemies also have bad laning phase. If you play the Decidueye and the enemy plays Cinderace, yes, the Decidueye is going to work in lane. That's how it is, right? But as soon as you play against any of these top Pokemon, you're going to struggle a crazy amount. And that's just how it always is. Buzzwole, I'm going to put in... It's just so difficult to play this Pokemon, like, as well. But, like, it has its moments, and I'd rather still have Buzzwole than these Pokemon in my team when it comes to laning phase, because I know that at least that lane is gonna go well, or that path is gonna go well. It's still hard to close out games with Buzzwole though, very difficult. Serena, same tier I would say up here. I'm not a big Serena fan right now, but I still think it's much better than the rest down here. Scyther is alright as well in lane, nothing too crazy. His counterpart Scizor, I would not recommend playing Scizor right now. It's absolutely bad. I feel like it's kind of almost griefing picking this Pokemon. Absol doesn't really seem too good as well anymore either. It should be like A- or something this tier. Maybe this could be A-. Nah, A- is also not quite it, but maybe I need another tier for A- or something to put those Pokemon in. But I think this still looks quite fine right now. Comfy goes into S tier just because as soon as you have a Pokemon that like runs over the game, like Urshifu, Dodrio, Zacian, even Garchomp or something, or Trevenant, like the game suddenly becomes so easy, right? Comfy just makes, if you have a good player on your team and a good Pokemon, you're going to win games like crazy. It's just how it is. And just Zacian, just the Zacian makes Comfy obviously an S tier Pokemon, I feel like. Just because like Comfy will always rely, as soon as there's no like insane Pokemon that Comfy can tee up with, it's probably somewhere here. But as long as it's the case, Comfy's gonna be up here. Dodrio is a good laner as well. Not sure. I mean, I think it's A tier for sure. Gonna put into A tier or A+ tier. Dodrio laning phase. Dodrio is just a good Pokemon. It's just straight out. It's just a good Pokemon. Didn't get nerfed either. And now we have the two Urshifu builds, which I think are okay to play in lane. They're nothing crazy, but I do think they still work as well because you get to level 5. Getting to level 5 can be difficult, but as soon as you get to level 5, you can take over lanes. Either Vic Blow just gets every single last hit, or Water Bear gets just runs over the game, right? But getting to level 5 is still going to take a tiny bit. But after that, those Pokemon is obviously staying great. And now Goodra. Goodra is difficult to rank because it has very bad laning phase. But I think I'm going to put into B+ tier for now. But I think it has potential to be A very soon as well. Like, I do like the Pokemon. It's hard to close our games, but I do know that Goodra's late game is actually quite good. I think Goodra's late game is very, very good. And it has for sure a lot of potential as a Pokemon. But right now, I think I'd rather put it into B+ tier. Just because laning, just because level 8. Like, getting to level 8 can be so difficult sometimes, right? It can be super, super difficult. And you're just going to lose half your games because the enemies had a good laning phase and you just couldn't get to level 8 before you even have impact. This Pokemon needs a lot of experience. And as a defender, you can't afford to play Pokemon that needs a crazy amount of experience, especially when there's like Mamoswine, there's Slowbro, Trevenant, right? There's so many defenders that are just higher ranked and have much earlier power spikes. You just can't afford to be such a late game Pokemon. Also, it doesn't even feel like a defender, it's more like an all-rounder, right? At the same time. If you get to level 13, it's an amazing Pokemon. If you get the VIP Plus, where you get a GUI effect on every single VIP, it becomes a very, very strong Pokemon because you can apply your GUI all the time and you can reset your abilities with basic attacks. So also somewhere between here, but I think for sure it's still lacking a tiny bit. It's lacking a tiny bit to sustain, and but I do think this Pokemon has potential. It has for sure potential, and I do like playing it as well. That's for the lane tier list. Let me know in the comments what you think about it as always, and I'm gonna head over to the central tier list in a second. Now for the central area tier list, where Pokemon, of course, they go into central area, how they perform throughout the entire game. And I'm just going to put Zacian into S tier, and I think nothing else belongs into S tier because Zacian is just this broken of a Pokemon that I can't really put anything next to it. So everything else would be probably ranked under the Pokemon. I think Venusaur is honestly very underrated of a jungle Pokemon. I think it's very, very good. Also very good comfy Pokemon as well. So as long as that's the case, yeah, it's going to be a good Pokemon. Gengar, I think Gengar just struggles in the meta. It's difficult. It's a very difficult meta to play in. Very tanky. You can see already on top, those Pokemon are very hard to play into. But it does have that chance of one-shotting maybe someone before they can even react to it. And I can still make Gengar an absolutely great pick in solo queue, doesn't matter what. And you can still for sure carry games on a Gengar. Gardevoir, I still think solid 8 here. This Pokemon with Psychic is just very good. Psychic, using special defense with Espeon in the team is absolutely deadly as well. And this Pokemon still has a lot of impact in games. Absol, also B+ tier. Nothing too crazy. I think Pursuit Sucker Punch is great. It does work quite well, but I can't really rank it much, much higher. Garchomp as well to me is a solid A jungle Pokemon. Do think it's a bit better in lane just because then you also have another jungle Pokemon slot open. And but yeah, it's also a great central area Pokemon for sure. Because you get to level 5 very fast, you can secure the first Altaria, and when this Pokemon gets a level lead, it also can just run over games very, very easily. Greninja, I just don't think this Pokemon really does too much right now. It's very difficult to play physical Taker Pokemon, and it does struggle a decent amount in the current meta, I have to say right now. Next up, we have Charizard, which I think I'm going to put back into A tier. For now, I might be even better. Like, it's hard to judge this Pokemon. I do think it's very good again though. Like it has a lot of potential, but I can't put it much higher than A right now. But I feel like Zacian just still screws with so many like with data as well about Pokemon, because as soon as one team has Zacian, the other doesn't. Like the win rates of those Pokemon just fall down by a lot as well. So it's very hard to judge how good these Pokemon are, because when I play Charizard into Zacian, I mean, good luck playing the game, right? Like it's just how it is. It's very, very difficult. So it's quite hard to judge. I think Talonflame is actually quite underrated jungle Pokemon. I think it's very good. I personally think Talonflame is a good Pokemon. Like, Flame Charge is very annoying, and is something you can for sure play. Zeraora, don't like, still won't like, not a good Pokemon. Lucario is a jungle Pokemon. Can't recommend either. I do think it's a terrible jungle Pokemon, central area Pokemon, for a lot of reasons. Blastoise is actually quite decent as a central area Pokemon. I don't want to put it too high though, so I'm going to put it into B+ tier, but if you want to play defender in central area, I think Blastoise can for sure be an option. Then we have Cinderace, which I think is the same as Greninja. It can work, but it needs a lot of protection. It needs the right enemy team. I don't think it's anything that's too crazy right now, but again, B+ means you can play those Pokemon, right? I don't think B+ is griefing. I think down here it becomes a bit questionable, but B+ again means you can totally play those Pokemon, and it's going to be totally fine as well. Cramorant, A. Yeah, just again, good Pokemon. I think it's actually maybe even higher, but I think A is totally reasonable for this Pokemon to be in. Then we have Pikachu. For some reason, people think that I made Jungle Pikachu like a thing in this game, which I didn't, and I'm going to put into C tier as well. I wouldn't recommend jungling with Pikachu, but you can. Nothing too amazing. Ninetales actually still one of my favorite jungle Pokemon, though. Like, I think Ninetales can be jungling, just because you get a lot of experience from it, and it can be like a pseudo AD carry as well. And it's not too bad, honestly, as a central area Pokemon. Pikachu, though, just doesn't really have that same... Pikachu's more like a utility Pokemon, right? And the thing, like a utility Pokemon in the central area position who gets off experience is just not really that worth it. Very straightforward. Machamp is totally fine as a jungle Pokemon as well. Has very strong gains, very strong first fight at level 9. I can recommend Dodrio, easily A+ tier. Can't put into S tier just because of Zacian, because Zacian is going to be the lone doggo up there, and nothing else can be able to rival it, I feel like. But yeah, Dodrio, obviously amazing Pokemon. Decidueye. So Decidueye, again, if there was draft right now, I would put Decidueye here, but because there is no drafting, it also belongs into B+ tier, just because there is no drafting. And if there was drafting, Decidueye would be an amazing Pokemon you can pick sometimes. You can see it in tournaments as well. Decidueye often is last picked, and if you see the enemy team comp, you can actually decide to go into this Pokemon and totally play it. Sylveon is also quite alright as a jungle Pokemon. Can be played, Hyper Voice, Mystic Fire, but yeah. It's nothing crazy either, nothing crazy. Dragonite is very bad right now, I feel like, but I mean, maybe I should try him again. Maybe it's not as bad as we think it is. Currently, I think it's the lowest picked Pokemon in the entire game as well. Not a good sign for this Pokemon, but I do think, I mean, it's probably not as bad as we maybe make it up to be. We'll sure have to give it another try and see and test it out, and maybe I will change my opinion for the next tier list. Serena. I mean, Serena Jungle is quite okay because you can actually get experience and get to level 6 much earlier. But this Pokemon just doesn't feel great in general right now, right? It's nothing too amazing. It's very squishy. I guess the Pokemon feels so squishy, it is insane. But I did put it into B+ tier, I think, in my lane tier list. So it can't be worse than lane. So, of course, you just get more experience even then, you know, in lane. So that for sure works. Next up we have Aegislash. I think it's kind of the same, similar to Serena. When you find the experience, it gets to level 7. It's actually quite decent, and it also has objective secure. But I can't put it much higher. Duraludon. I mean, I think it's probably still an A tier just because it has just because a good late game carry as well. That's like, I think it's one of the safer physical attacker Pokemon to pick that you can have success with. Azumarill in Central area. I mean, it does work, but I would rather play it in lane. Funny enough, I posted a. No, I didn't post the Central. I posted an Azumarill video, but not Central, so never mind that. But yeah, I think for sure you want to lane with it. You want to get to level 4 and lane fast, which you do, and you want to just destroy lanes, right? It's just the ways to put it back into Central area. After you just got level 4, you can just start destroying the lane, and you want to stay in that lane and make sure you win it a bit much harder. Espeon, it's an OP like lane Pokemon, but can also be an insane jungle Pokemon because this Pokemon is just very good right now. And if an attacker's good in lane, it's also going to be good in Central area, just because it deals a lot of damage, right? And like, it's just good. Like, no matter what, you can, even if you play Duo Q, you can maybe take the first rotation, get to level 4 even faster, and destroy lanes. But I would obviously still recommend rather playing this Pokemon in lane, because then you can just have another strong Central area Pokemon, while Espeon, you know, takes over the lane. So, but if I would pick it in Central area, I think it would still be a great choice. Doesn't matter what, that's just what I want to say. But I would not recommend playing it in Central area, just because how strong its laning phase is. Delphox also stay easily A+ tier to me. Mystic Fire, Flame Charge, Fire Blast, both good builds. They both work very well. Glaceon as well, still, even after the nerfs. It's just a broken Pokemon to me. Like, it's so easy to play as well. It does so much damage for no reason that you can't even dodge. Icy Wind received a small nerf. Doesn't really impact it too much. Buzzwole. So Buzzwole jungle is not too bad. The problem is that if you fund a lot of experience into Buzzwole, then you have no late game carry, and it doesn't carry late game, so it's a bit of an issue. Trenator, I feel like, has fallen off a decent amount. But if you play it in Central area, it's still absolutely monster of a Pokemon. If it gets experience, it's going to be there for late game, and it's going to be an absolute menace. Mew, I think Mew in the Central area was good, but after the nerfs, I think the jungle clear is quite bad now. The Solar Beam nerf hurt it a lot when it comes to jungling, because you now have much slower clear for the first rotation. So, and in general, you have much less PvE damage from the nerfs. So I don't know if I would play Mew into the Central area anymore. Like last patch, it was here. This patch, it's probably somewhere between these two positions. I think I saw Utao saying it's pretty much dead. But I haven't tried it myself yet after the nerfs in Central area, so I have to give that a try still as well. Scizor, if you pick Scizor in Central area, you're griefing. Just gonna say it straight up. You're just absolutely griefing if you pick this Pokemon in Central area. Scyther is still decent. Nothing too crazy though either anymore, but I still think this Pokemon for sure can make a lot of things happen and can be very deadly, especially in, you know, solo queue as well. But you have to get used to the nerfs. The night move rate is actually quite low now, and it might catch you off guard. Zoroark in Central area I actually do not like at all. I think it's just purely a giant, like a lane Pokemon now, just because you want attack weight stacks and you want to take over laning phase. I mean, if you can jungle until level 5 and then stay in lane, obviously it's great, but I would not recommend playing this Pokemon in the center area too much. Again, it's similar to like Buzzwole as well, and Azuma. Like you like a lake and carry if you pick those Pokemon in center area. If it gets a lot of experience, it's not really that useful with a lot of experience. So, gonna leave it there. I'm gonna put both those Shifus back into A+ tier as well. Still amazing Pokemon. I don't think I have to say. I don't think I have to add too much to that. Those Pokemon are just very, very broken, right? Very, very strong. Then we have Dragapult, which I think is actually quite decent. I rather have Dragapult than the other Pokemon, or like, you know, the Cinderace, Greninja in my center area. Dragon Dance has a lot of carry potential with those resets, and I think Dragapult is for sure heavily underrated, but it can also be quite difficult to play, of course, because there's a lot of stunts in the game that can get you out of your Dragon Dance, but that's what full heal is for, and hopefully can keep you in it. And now for Goodra center area, I mean, I made a video about it, if you should play Goodra in center area. You probably shouldn't, but it's something I feel like you can do if you really want to, and it's gonna, like, again, if Goodra gets experience, it's a strong Pokemon, right? If it gets experience, it's actually quite strong, and shouldn't be underestimated when it comes to that. I think Lapras is going to be similar as well. I think Lapras is also going to be a fine center area defender if you really... I think you can pick these two if your team just goes full attacker on top or bot, right? You have a Cinderace, a God of War, Cramorant or something, and then a support, and you like some frontline, maybe some engaging. You can pick Blastoise or Goodra in center area. I think those are two amazing defenders you can pick in that position when you are lacking some frontline. Actually, now looking at this, I think Zoroark is actually back up here. When I put Gengar up so right here, I think I have to put Zoroark there as well, for sure. I mean, it has to be, I feel like, in the same tier as these two Pokemon. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this tier list. This is for the Central Area one as well. And again, let me know in the comments what you agree and what you disagree with.